This aftermarket set of Joy-Cons released to the public 2 days ago. I've had my hands on it for a couple of weeks and I understand all of the commotion. A surplus of articles from reputable gaming journalistic platforms. You had to pre-order the controller, and if you didn't, it's already sold out. This plastic princess currently isn't sold in Jeff Bezos' back door. That's Amazon. And a huge note, the Wizard is the direct successor, the spiritual successor, if you will, to the Wavebird, which is a fantastic wireless GameCube controller. However, the Wizard took all of the areas of improvement, the shortcomings, the cons from the first iteration, improved on them, and then some, and we now have the best set of Joy-Cons with a GameCube button layout, mind you, that you can currently buy. If you'd like to see this controller reviewed on a multitude of categories, component by component, face buttons, triggers, D-pad, etc., stick around and hang out with me. But if you're strapped for time, these Joy-Cons use magnetic Hall effect sensors in the thumbstick modules rather than potentiometer sensors, so there is no physical connection. It's the connection of magnets being broken, and that's what's registering the movement of your thumbsticks, so these will not get stick drift, at least not in your lifetime. And while this isn't necessarily new technology, we saw this on the Sega Dreamcast, and even before that with the Sega Saturn 3D. This isn't a 3D controller, this is just the base or standard Sega Saturn. But luckily there's been a huge push recently with third-party gamepad or controller companies. Not even high-end flagship premium controllers in some kind of an astronomical price point, but standard entry-level controllers in that $50 to $70 price point are sporting these magnetic Hall effect sensors. However, it's pretty much only Nintendo controllers right now, leaving Team Green and Team Blue with their cheese out in the wind. What a long-winded intro. Bring back that tornado and review this gamepad for the people, please.
This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles.
You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons? We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or tutorial on how to overclock your controller? Check out the controller playlist. Bing bong.
Controller captain out.
A quick disclaimer, this controller was sent for review, but this is going to be an honest, comprehensive review. I haven't been paid or told to say anything about it, so if there's any cons, shortcomings, or areas of improvement, you're going to hear about it. So these companies make better products over time. Now, full disclosure, before we jump into reviewing the Wizard, the successor to the Wavebird, this is not my first experience with NYXI products, specifically the Switch Joy-Cons that I have reviewed on the channel previously, which I lauded very heavily because they have several benefits over the stock Joy-Cons. I'm not going to touch on it here, entire review linked in the description below, but just to summarize, it is a night and day step up over the stock Joy-Cons and face buttons, analog sticks, you have smaller dead zones, more travel, anti-friction rings, better triggers and bumpers, and most importantly, it's actually comfortable because they're large, ergonomic, sculpted for your hands, not tiny little Joy-Cons that you can clamp onto like that. But the Wizard, which is their latest product, and unfortunately it is sold out, NYXI did just make a tweet 6 hours ago saying that they are working to replenish stock of this unit. It does only come in purple, which makes sense to me because that is a traditional Nintendo accessory color. Some of the key features that I want to quickly touch on so you know that this controller has it. The biggest feature is going to be magnetic Hall effect sensors in the thumbstick modules. No stick drift for you. You've got a turbo mode and a back button setting that you can assign to buttons. Mecha tactile bumpers and triggers. Marketing gimmick name aside, they're actually mechanical switches, much like what you would see in a mechanical keyboard or mouse. Rated for millions of clicks, also much quicker to actuate and more satisfying on the fingertips. You also have 2 remappable rear buttons. Keep in mind, with Joy-Con, since they are 2 separate pieces, unlike a Pro controller that you're probably used to for Xbox or PlayStation or PC, where you can bind any of the face buttons, D-pad, whatever, to any of the rear buttons, it has to be one of the buttons on the right Joy-Con assigned to the rear button on the right, and one of the buttons on the left Joy-Con, so probably the D-pad, to the left button. We have yet to see a Joy-Con company make it to where you can assign either of the rear buttons to any of the face buttons. It just doesn't work like that because of how Joy-Cons work. 2 separate pieces. That sucks ass, I know. Stupid. Back in it to win it. Illuminated ABXY buttons. This is so sweet. I have been wishing that manufacturers would put this on TV remotes for the longest time, so in the dark, I'm not fumbling around. I think it's more important on a TV remote than a controller because most of us hardcore gamers know exactly the layout of the face buttons. Do you really have to look down at them? You probably don't. You've been gaming for decades. It is nice to be able to glance down and see the face buttons illuminated. Plus, it's not too bright or disorienting. It's actually a very light glow, a very subtle glow, if you will. Onboard control of your Rumble Force motors, and one major mention, the face buttons are laid out like a GameCube controller. And this should go without saying, but maybe it needs mentioned that since this is a Joy-Con set, you can actually snap them together into one controller and play with it like a standard Pro controller. And that's why we watched the video. There's a feature I forgot to mention. You can swap out the actual thumbstick ring, so if you want an 8-way gate, you can have that for fighting games. But if you're playing something that's not a fighting game, virtually any other genre, you want the thumbstick gates that are a circle, so you have full control of your thumbstick or joystick. If you wanted to pause the screen to read some of the key features, you may do so now. Just a little pinch and zoom on your phone. First of all, the naming convention, Wizard, decent. I'm gonna give it a pass, 5 out of 10.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Some of the controllers I've reviewed recently have had blatantly confusing naming conventions. This is just simple. You got the make and the model, company and the specific controller, and then what platforms it's for. The Nintendo Switch, which of course includes the two variants, the Lite and the OLED, because, well, it's the same console. Ain't no Switch 2 or Switch Pro, that's for darn sure. Then you're gonna have your inner box. We like our innies and our outies. It is gonna be NYXI's theme color, which is the same as PlayStation, royal blue. It's a good color for me as well on the unboxing table. You are gonna have your controller, which is inside of a foam dust cover, and by default, it is going to be linked in the center with this mid-bar. Midbar? Midgar for you Final Fantasy fans. This center section that allows you to snap on each individual Joy-Con piece by dropping it in. And it even tells you how to do that. It says slide down, so you don't come in from the bottom or from the side. You just drop it in like that. You didn't even have to do the little, but it just snaps right into place, and when you dock it into your Switch, the face buttons will illuminate. You are going to have one piece of documentation, that is your instruction manual, pamphlet, or brochure. It's decent, it has 5 languages, English is amongst one of them, that's going to be pages 1 through 9. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to give the instruction manual a 7 out of 10. I like that there's a physical manual included, I don't have to scan a QR code, and that has pictures and colored diagrams. Granted, they're not very big, the font's not very large, and English is kind of, not buried, but it is amongst other languages. 7 out of 10. This piece in the top is just the divider, but down here you are going to have your accessories. As for the 2 included accessories, you are going to have a 3-foot USB-C cable. It's just rubber, not microfiber or braided. Relatively lightweight and flexible though. You're probably just going to use this to charge the controller via the 2 USB-C ports. So this is acceptable. And then this is really neato Toledo. You actually have a couple of swappable and droppable, apparently. That wasn't planned, by the way. That just happens like that. Thumbstick gates over here, which can be 8-way out of the gate, or out of the gate. Pre-installed, the thumbstick gates are 8-way, meaning that they have to be in 8 distinct steps. You cannot move them wherever you want fluidly or smoothly. It's gonna tell you, hey, you're there, so on and so forth. That's on the left and right. That's a great layout for fighting games and retro platformers. That's about it. Everything else you want full control. So in order to swap these out, you're going to turn them a quarter turn counterclockwise or to the left, lefty-loosey. This one is locked in place and this one is unlocked. Then you're going to pull up on the thumbstick module. You're not going to break it or anything. Just grab her by the tip of the base and pull. Those are your thumbstick modules, and they are using magnetic Hall effect sensors as opposed to potentiometer sensors, I should say, and carbon contact patches, which we've examined and talked about extensively on the channel in the past. They're simply an old, blood-run, cold piece of shit design, and we're kind of evolving or progressing at this point towards magnetic Hall effect sensors, which is funny because it's not new technology. Again, like I said during the intro, it was in the Dreamcast controller, for God's sake. Now, not that you would ever need to, because these aren't going to get stick drift, but are these hot swappable? No, you would actually need to solder to remove and replace these modules if you wanted to do that. But what we're replacing right now is going to be the thumbstick gates over here. You're going to start by putting your thumbstick base on. It can only go on one way. You can't do it incorrectly. Just slide it on. Sweet. And then take your thumbstick base. In this case, we want the circular one, not the 8-way. And you can't put this in the wrong way either, really. Snaps right into place. And now to lock it, you're going to turn it again about that quarter turn to where the lines and dots are lined up, and you're locked into place. Now, cosmetically or appearance-wise, I will be overlaying a ton of B-roll throughout this video, but I think this is an absolutely gorgeous controller. I think this traditional classic purple design and the fact that they went with that big bird slapping you silly yellow right analog stick just looks so good. Plus, the coloration and lettering on the face buttons is very good too. Also, the shape or silhouette of this controller, the actual molded shape of the shell with the centerpiece attached and the 2 Joy-Cons on each side, looks really sick, and most likely this will earn itself a place on the controller wall. Manufacturer's weight and dimensions are going to be popping up somewhere in front of my face because numbers are quite important, but I think what's more important than numbers, specs on a tech sheet, so to speak, how does this controller actually feel in the hands? For real, on the gamer paws, if you will. Oh boy, oh yes. It is very comfortable, and it might not look it from afar. As you're watching this video or you see a picture of this online, you might think, ooh, that looks kind of silly. How's that gonna feel in my hand? Actually pretty good. I'm 5'11", I've got average hands. There's no such thing. These are what my hands look like, and these are what your hands look like as well. What we're feeling as I talk over my shoulder provides very minimal stress or fatigue on your knuckles. This is a very comfortable ergonomic position, and I could hold this controller for hours. As for build quality, actually quite good. Not just for a controller in this price point, but period. The plastics that they went with that make contact with your hand, so the surface material, very good. The rubber or silicone compound on the analog sticks, very good. Then you get the clicky bumpers and triggers, very minimal wiggle in the face or action buttons, not a lot of play in there. And each individual Joy-Con just feels quite well built. I'm gonna give build quality a 4.5 out of 5. As for a quality control reputation, I haven't heard a negative or positive one around NYXI, which is good because it doesn't carry the best warranty. Segue into that. As with all NYXI products, this controller does cover 6 months of coverage. However, you can opt into getting slapped around with email marketing. By giving up your email address, then you could just unsubscribe or give them a burner email address. That will extend your warranty by 6 months, giving you what I would deem an acceptable warranty at 1 year. I generally hate warranty systems where you have to do some social media bullshit or opt into email marketing to extend your warranty. Because the standard warranty is 6 months unless you opt into email marketing, then it's 1 year, which still is just standard or okay. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. But the D-pad over here, cosmetically, it's traditional Nintendo gray. I like to see that. But this little crossover here is going to be a very important component on this controller, considering it is modeled after the GameCube layout. So players that aren't using this for Smash Ultimate are probably going to be using it to play GameCube games on their Switch. And a lot of those use the D-pad pretty extensively. This D-pad is absolutely amazing. To my recollection, one of the best I've felt, if not the best, because it strikes a good balance that I think will satisfy both groups of players when it comes to D-pads. The ones that prefer 4 distinct steps and don't like them to bleed together into diagonal inputs, and those that need diagonal inputs for their games and prefer to be able to do roll-offs with a nice center pivot point. This does a little bit of everything, and while it's doing it, you get a nice tactile click, which feels mechanical, but I think it's still a membrane switch. I'm really not sure, to be 110% honest, but it doesn't matter because it feels goddamn amazing. 5 out of 5. Now, as for the face or action buttons, they are of course in the GameCube layout, so don't get this controller if you don't want the GameCube layout of face buttons. If you want a killer set of Joy-Cons with the traditional Switch layout, check out the ones I reviewed previously, which are linked below. Oh boy, these face or action buttons. There's a story to be told here. If only I had an original GameCube controller and another third-party GameCube controller to compare this to. Alright, honey bun, the fun ain't done. This is the traditional, original, real OEM GameCube controller. Oh, those are a joy to this day. This is a PowerA wireless controller I reviewed on the channel previously, Pikachu themed, of course. Don't think I prefer the original, but this does feel really good. A couple things, couple notes. These are substantially quieter and require much more resistance or force to press and actuate them than the original GameCube controller and a third-party competitor. They appear to be spaced out and sized identically, if not identically, so similarly that I can't tell to my corneas, to my human eyeballs. And I have the eyes of an eagle, so I'm gonna be fully honest here. I do think the face buttons are a little bit lacking, kind of the Achilles heel or the shortcoming thus far with this controller, because I actually do prefer the feeling of the original real GameCube controller as well as this cheaper wireless competitor. Yes, they don't light up with a white glow through them, but that's kind of gimmicky considering you probably know where the buttons are. You're not really gonna be like, ooh, where's the A button? Oh, if it wasn't lit up, I wouldn't have known how to jump. I'm gonna give the face or action buttons a 3 out of 5. As for the accessory button suite, so that is gonna be these 8 buttons on the front of the controller, you get a nice tactile, distinct click with all of them, and they're all easy to press as they're big enough, far enough out of the front shell, and also in a good position to where you can easily hit them, except for the turbo buttons, which you're not gonna be pressing regularly during gameplay, just when you wanna activate or deactivate turbo function for one of the buttons. 4 out of 5. Now as for the thumbsticks, joysticks, analog sticks, front niblets, giblets, doodads, whatever the hell you wanna call them, but we're gonna talk about them. They're fantastic. They're using magnetic Hall effect sensors for the thumbstick modules, as opposed to potentiometers and carbon contact patches, which are gonna get stick drift. That's awesome. So something else might break on this controller, but in your lifetime, stick drift shouldn't be the issue. But taking it a step further than that, the fact that you have swappable thumbstick gates and the rubber or silicone compound that they used is not only comfortable, but also very grippy. I love the cosmetic look of the yellow right analog stick. Clicking down L3 and R3, well, that's PlayStation terms. Clicking down on the left and right analog stick feels very good. Good travel, range of motion. One complaint I have, you have a really unsatisfying sound. As you move the thumbstick around the outside of the gates, there's a lot of plastic creaks, moans, and groans. I think that's because of these swappable rings here. That's what's causing that noise. It's not a lack of structural rigidity or anything. It's these swappable rings. One other pro or benefit of Hall effect thumbsticks over potentiometers is generally the dead zones are smaller and they're more accurate and tight. However, I was unable to actually test these thumbsticks, even forcing compatibility through a couple of software programs I have on my PC. So all that technical analysis I usually do on my controller reviews, where we test the circularity clarity and response of the modules. We're not going to be able to do that here, but these did feel fantastic when gaming on the Switch. The one thing I will say is, granted, the hardware, the actual controller, might have smaller dead zones, but the Switch, the games, the software, is automatically programmed to have like bigger dead zones because it thinks you're using stock Joy-Cons. So I didn't really notice really tight dead zone where I barely started to move my analog stick and my character would start panning the camera or anything like that. It's a Switch, for God's sake. It's not a new console because of this controller, so it's not going to really change the dead zones of Switch games. You'll be able to appreciate the tighter dead zones of Hall effect sensors. 5 out of 5. As for the bumpers, they are in a good ergonomic position where I want to naturally rest my hand. I can hit the bumpers with the meat of my fingers, however I don't recommend using the tip because these are on a swivel or hinge mechanism, so they're harder to actuate here than virtually anywhere else on the button. But they do look and feel great. I'm going to give them a 4.5 out of 5. Carrying on that trend, these triggers are fantastic as they do have a very short pull, very light, easy to actuate, and even though they have that mechanical click, they're not absurdly loud. And I like the triggers more than the bumpers. I'm going to be giving them a 5 out of 5. The rear buttons are small enough and also sunken in with the rear shell to where you're not going to accidentally actuate them. They also do require enough resistance to where that's not going to be a problem. However, when you want to hit them, purposely hit them, again, they're a little bit small and hard to hit. So I actually do prefer their original iteration with their traditional Joy-Cons, as those buttons are a little bit easier to press. Remapping them is stupid fast and easy. You're going to hold down the profile button on either side, which is this little gear cog, in combination with something on the right for the rear button on the right and something on the left for the rear button on the left. Again, you have that major shortcoming or setback that, unlike any other rear button or paddle controller where you can bind anything on the front of the controller to anything on the back of the controller, it doesn't work like that, sweetheart. Science, it's two separate pieces. But here's the thing, I'm not necessarily a bright man, a deep thinker, if you will, an intellectual type. I do believe there is some way to implement a centerpiece that will allow these two sides to communicate, not to mention they could do it wirelessly considering they're already connected via Bluetooth. Never mind. Little mini rant over. These are good rear buttons, but not as good as their previous version or iteration. I'm gonna give them a 3 out of 5. A 3 out of 5. You know what time it is? Don't look at your watch or anything. It's pros, cons, and verdict time. Cons, shortcomings, are areas of improvement. You can't get this controller right now, so replenish your stock in NYXI. In all seriousness, they have been chirping tweets on Twitter and other social media platforms that they are diligently working to restock these bad boys. Secondly, I would genuinely like to see NYXI completely obliterate the social media enhancement or extension for the warranty and make the standardized warranty across the board 1 year for all of their products rather than the 6 months that it currently is. Next, this controller only comes in purple. I would like to see a couple of additional colorways. That's a little bit nitpicky, but more colorways, please. The face buttons were the only component I was a little bit flaccid with, or a little bit underwhelmed with, I should say. I like that they are quiet. I like that it requires a good amount of resistance to press them, and I like the illumination. The little lights that bleed through is really nice. What I don't like is they feel very squishy or mushy in comparison to the other two GameCube controllers I was side by side comparing, and all of the buttons are sunken in further than they should be, but especially A. A is abnormally sunken into the front shell. I actually think it's because there's that little ramp or funnel area that lifts up slightly, which just makes A little bit not pleasant to hit, but not terrible. I'm not saying this isn't usable or anything. I'm just saying compared to other GameCube controllers, like the original, the real one, this doesn't feel as good. That's all I got. As for the pros, there is a smorgasbord. First of all, the swappable thumbstick gates, that's cool. If you like an 8-way for fighting games, great. The lights on the face buttons looks really cool. The mechanical bumpers and triggers are a joy. And best of all, magnetic Hall effect sensors in the thumbsticks. So what is my verdict? Time to slam the gavel. This is a fantastic set of Joy-Cons. The only thing is, the face button layout is for GameCube. So what I'm sure NYXI is working on, what they have in the pipe, in the hopper, their next project, the next product they're developing, I'm sure, is going to be a set of Joy-Cons that follows the traditional face button layout for Switch and is almost identical in shape and design to the Joy-Cons that I tested previously, but implementing or integrating the awesome features of the Wizard with the new version. For example, light up face buttons, magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules, for sure. That's a big one. And the mechanical bumpers and triggers. This is by far the best set of Joy-Cons that I have tested. However, it's pretty niche who's going to want to pick it up because of the face button layout. Are you a hardcore Smash Ultimate player? Or are you playing through your retro library of GameCube games on your Switch? Then hell yeah, this makes some sense for you. But otherwise, I'd advise just going with NYXI's previous version that I've reviewed. Even though it's using potentiometer thumbsticks and might get stick drift, it's still an awesome set of Joy-Cons and more applicable to most Switch gamers because it's the traditional face button layout. The NYXI Wizard is linked in the description below alongside an exclusive discount code for my audience, and I will see you stallions and stallionettes tomorrow. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the stallions and stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.